I was 15 years old and I was speaking to a large group of my peers in what was the first speaking opportunity I'd had as a guest speaker in a different city and in front of strangers. And I remember being so nauseously nervous. I can remember the pit in my stomach. Now, this was before YouTube, streaming apps, and the internet. So all of my communication was learned through experiences like I would have on this very night. Now, as a baby communicator, I didn't even have the awareness that I needed to take the gum out of my mouth. So I didn't. And as I began to talk, the gum started to dissolve in my mouth. So I had to move it from cheek to cheek, and I moved it above my tongue and under my tongue, just trying to find a place that it could sit so that I could continue to talk. And if things couldn't get worse, right in the middle of me speaking, this is an absolute true story. A tornado siren went off, and everyone in the room immediately got up and began to leave. Now, there I was, a 15-year-old, speaking to hundreds of my peers. And in that moment, not knowing how to navigate the gum that's in my mouth, the words that I'm trying to communicate, and a tornado siren going off, and there is everyone in front of me leaving. And I remember just standing there, and this was my thought. This was so bad that God had to send a tornado to save every person in this room from my talk. I literally thought a tornado would have been better than the rest of those people sitting there listening to me. Now, like most things, communication must be cultivated in order for it to grow. And in our last podcast, The Business of Better Communication Part 1, we discussed some of the barriers to your communication. And if you missed that, I encourage you to go listen to part 1 and then come back to this session and finish this out at another time. So today, I want to share with you what I wish someone so desperately would have shared with me way back when I started my journey of communicating. Over the next few minutes, you're going to learn a very simple process, just 4 steps to review your communication. And the best part is that you can even begin doing that today. So welcome to the Mind Your Business podcast, the podcast for whatever business is on your mind. Let's get started.
Well, that's excellent.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Mind Your Business podcast. Hey, as always, if this brings value to your life, will you do me a huge favor? Please like, subscribe, and share this with other people. This helps me add as much value to as many people as possible. Now, in terms of communication, the only way to know if you're growing in your communication is to review your progress the same way that a sports team would review their plays and all of their previous games. Now, many of us would perceive our communication one way, but other people experience it completely different. It's like a team that thought they did a really good job on a particular play, only to go back to review the tape and go, oh, it didn't actually play out the way that we thought it did. You see, the problem is that perception becomes our reality. So we need to know if our reality is based on a false self-perception. So before we discuss how to review your communication, I want to take a moment just to quickly see if your perception is on point or if you need to realign your reality. And these statements are really good indicators that you may lack self-awareness. So as we talk through just a few of these little statements, I just want you to ask yourself if you've stated these yourself, or maybe you know one who has said this and you thought to yourself, okay. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Maybe you've heard someone say, or maybe you've said, well, I'm not like most people. You get in a conversation about maybe something that you need to grow in, or you have a weakness in some area of your life, or maybe something that you don't understand or you don't know, or whatever the conversation may be that leads someone to make a statement like, well, I'm not like most people. And every time I would hear someone say that, it sounds prideful to me, because I think to myself, so when you say you're not like most people, what you're communicating is that you have somehow managed to overcome and perfect all of our natural imperfections with nothing left to work on. The truth is, we are all broken people. We all have imperfections, and we all have areas in which we can grow in. So when someone says, well, I'm just not like most people, Well, that may be their self-perception, but I can almost guarantee that every one of us listening to that statement could probably give them a top 10 list in no particular order of things that they could begin to work on so that they would know, I think you're probably more like the rest of us than you think. What about this statement? Someone would say, no offense, but they begin the statement. They begin telling you something. They begin unloading something in their communication by saying, no offense. And you think to yourself, well, I am so thankful that you said no offense, because had you not have started this statement with no offense, what you just said to me would have been offensive. The reality is, the disclaimer that they give, they think it gives them freedom to say whatever they want without causing harm. But in reality, by simply saying no offense, that actually acknowledges that what they're about to say is, in fact, going to be offensive. Here are a few other statements that I thought that may just be helpful to you so you can understand the perception of what we say versus the perception of what people hear, feel, or experience. What about this statement? Well, that's just the way that I am. I mean, why change it? Why do I have to work on anything? Why do I have to get better? Why do I have to grow? Because it's just the way that I am. Or I don't care what other people think. That's an easy way out to go, I'm not working on anything because I don't care what other people think. We think we have it together. Our perception is that we really don't care, when the reality is most everyone really does. Or I'm just telling it like it is. You say something, it's hurtful, it's offensive, people respond that way, and you say, well, why are you upset? I'm just telling it like it is. Or we try to overcorrect and we try to make up for it by making this statement, well, it was just a joke. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Why are your feelings hurt? It was just a joke. You see, the perception of what we say and the reality of what people hear can oftentimes be two very different things. And as we communicate, we want to add value. We want to teach people. We want to educate people. We want to elevate people. We want to empower people. Your communication is powerful. So if you want to grow in your communication, I want to give you these 4 very simple things that you can begin to do that I think are going to be powerful and they're going to help you. And the first thing that you need to start with is to simply record a 5-minute video. Record yourself a 5-minute video talking about anything that you want to talk about. And just grab your phone, grab a camera that you have, stand in front of the camera and record a 5-minute video of you speaking. Now, you can talk about anything you want. The video just needs to be non-rehearsed, it needs to be raw, and it needs to be real. You could tell about an experience you had at work, an experience you had with family. You could talk about a favorite TV show or a favorite movie or a book or whatever it is that you want to speak about. You just need to talk about it unscripted in front of the camera, recording yourself for 5 minutes. Now, some of you feel very intimidated right now to even think about standing in front of a camera and speaking for 5 minutes, but I hate to tell you, that's the easiest part of this entire process. Record a 5-minute video on your phone, let's say on your phone, talking about anything that you want to talk about. And then, after you have recorded your video, I need you to perform an auditory review. So, here's what you do. After you record the video, you mash play, and then you put your phone down, face down. Don't watch yourself, you just listen. Just listen to what it is that you're saying. Now, I speak for my profession, and I still do not like the sound of my own voice. And the chances are you don't like to hear yourself either. But I think it's so funny how we may not like the sound of our own voice, yet we don't hesitate to project it on other people. Now, this step of an auditory review is really critical because it will forever, I promise you, change you as a communicator because it helps you answer one very important question. And here's the question. If you were your audience, could you listen to you? If you were your audience, could you listen to you? That's a very sobering question to ask. But when you consider yourself as an audience to your communication, it helps you be able to connect what would be a disconnect between your communication and your audience. It places you in their perspective. So, as you listen, here's a few things to listen for, and this will help you answer, well, could I sit and listen to myself give this presentation? One thing that you may ask yourself is do I speak too fast? Am I speaking so fast because I'm nervous? Oftentimes, if we get nervous, we'll speed up our pace. I can remember in the very earliest days of my communication, I would spend days, weeks, months writing and preparing. I would have pages and pages and pages of notes. And I would think to myself, there's no way I will ever get through all of this. And then when it would come time to give this presentation or this talk in public, suddenly that 10 pages of notes went in like 5 minutes. I could not believe how quickly that it would all end. But it's because my nerves cause me to speak incredibly fast. And then in the tone of your voice, you ask yourself, is there variety in your pitch or your pace or your tone or even your volume? See, the pitch of your voice, the pacing of it, the tone and the volume you use, they all matter to your listener. If you want your audience to feel a certain emotion, do you project that vocally? That goes to your pitch, your pace, your tone, or your volume. So let's say you want them to feel excited. You want them to be motivated. You want them to feel like they can conquer the world. And that's the emotion that you want to bring out of your audience. Yet, when you listen to yourself, you sound a lot like Eeyore. I mean, you sound down. It sounds low. It sounds like there's no energy. But yet you want them to feel excited and motivated. But your voice does not project that. You have to listen if your voice is projecting the emotion that you want to draw out of your audience. Do you sound authentic to yourself? Or do you sound like you're trying to be someone else? Now, this is tough because we hear so many communicators. We watch people, we listen to people, we have people that we admire, people that we're drawn to in the way that they communicate. And so it's very tempting to try to pattern ourselves off of who we enjoy to listen to. But you have to be authentic to yourself. There's only one you, and there's only the perspective that you can give with the voice that you have, the tone that you have, the pacing that you have. All of these things come from you, and they need to be authentic to yourself. There is such power in the way you communicate. Let me give you a good example of just the power of small changes that you can make in your voice. So as you listen to something, you may think, oh, I don't like the way I sound here. I didn't like the way that I said that. I don't know how I should address this. But little tweaks that you can make, they're really powerful. So for example, if I make this statement, I'm a really good communicator. I'm a really good communicator. And I end on a high pitch. You notice that? I'm a really good communicator. It almost sounds like I'm asking a question rather than making a statement. And so the listener is not quite sure. They don't have confidence in what I'm saying. They're questioning, is he telling me he's a good communicator or is he asking me if he's a good communicator? However, notice this. If I say, I'm a really good communicator, and I end on a low pitch, it sounds a lot more certain and a lot more assured simply by changing the tone of my voice. This is why being self-aware is so important. I've been a fan of American Idol since the very beginning of the show. I know I have been there since the day it was popular to the days that it has kind of fallen off the map, but I just love watching people's dreams come true. And I really enjoyed the early days with all of these judges that are shown here. I love the early days because they showed the really bad contestants. Now, they don't do that much anymore. It was my favorite moments when the contestants are clearly not vocally talented. You know what I'm talking about? It's the type of contestant that I know they're not talented. You know it. The judges know it. And they express it very clearly. Simon Cowell was so fun to watch. It was so entertaining. I know it could be harsh, but it was just good television. But the only person who wasn't aware that they weren't good was the contestant. But when they find out, my favorite part is when they would inform the judges that the judges were wrong and that they, as the contestant, were right, and it was because their mom told them they could sing. You see, the self-perception, it was in a bad place. And unless we get a review, unless we hear ourselves, we'll never know what the reality really is. So don't be this person. Our perception may be that we sound confident, we sound clear, we sound competent, we think there's excitement and emotion in our voice. But is that your perception or is that your reality? And here's the truth. You'll never know if you don't listen to yourself. So you need an audible review. The next one is this right here. You need a visual review. You need a visual review. And this is the exact opposite of your audible review. This time, you can turn the phone over, look at the screen, but mute the sound and just watch. And it is as painful as it sounds. It's painful, but it is important. This step really is extra important because as you speak, even though you don't sound to yourself the exact way that everyone in the room may hear you sound, but you can at least hear a version of yourself when you speak. But it's impossible to see yourself unless you watch yourself on a video. And the way you look when you speak, it matters as much or more, possibly, than what you say. I mean, think about it. From the moment you step in front of a crowd, they have already formed their perception of you totally based on how you present yourself visually. So when you're communicating, not only are people learning from what you say, but they're learning from how you say it. Let me give you an example. This is the 738-55 rule of communication. It says that 7% of our communication is with our words, 38% of our communication is with our tone of voice, and 55% of our communication is with our body language. This is the rule that former FBI lead hostage negotiator Chris Voss used to try to persuade terrorists, bank robbers, and kidnappers all to begin to see things his way. He watched 55% body language because he believed that what they were doing with their body was actually more important than what they were saying. So as you watch yourself, notice your posture. Notice if you're sunken in, if you kind of seem like you don't have a lot of confidence in your posture. You need to hold your head up. You need to hold your shoulders back, put your chest out, because it shows confidence. It shows that you walk up and that you're very confident in what you're going to communicate. You need to notice your facial expressions. Your facial expressions bring you to life. If you're happy or if you're excited, I need you to ask yourself, does your face show it? You can't say, I'm so very happy and I'm so very glad to be here with you today. You can't say it when your face doesn't actually show it. See, you'll notice that your face motivates their face. When you smile, you'll notice that they begin to smile. Another thing is that you need to watch and see what your hands are doing. Are your hands stuck in your pockets all the time or just at your side? Are your hands sort of nervously moving without reason? Let your hands help you bring your communication to life. So you could say something like, I was so mad I could have punched them. And if your hands are at your side or in your pockets, it's not very visual. But you could say, I was so mad that I could have punched them. And when you get your hands up there, it's like, oh, he's serious. Or you could say, I would like to invite you to join me. Or you could take your hands and you could say, I would like to invite you to join me. There's something about the motion of your hands. The position of your hands are also important. When your hands are up and they're open, it's calm and it's inviting. And then when your hands are down, it brings authority. So think about if you walked into a room and you need to get everyone to be quiet. You could walk in and say, hey, everybody, could you be quiet? Or you walk in and you say, hey, everyone, let's be quiet. It's the hands, and it's bringing out the emotion. It helps bring to life what it is that you're communicating. Another thing that matters a lot is your movement. The movement of your body matters. Movement gives life to your voice. So you may start over here and you may say, you know what, I was in this place in my life, but after this, things began to change, and now I've already moved into this area of my life. You see, visually, by moving across that stage or moving from where you are, when you communicate, I was here, but now I'm here, it begins to change things a bit. Your movement, it matters. It helps bring things to life. Now, the very last of this step is once you have recorded your video, once you listen to the video, and once you watch the video, I want you to transcribe the video. There's lots of free apps online that will help you do this. But I want you to transcribe the video, and I want you to get it out. I want you to look at it. I want you to get a highlighter, and I want you to highlight all of the non-words, the filler words, the catchphrases. Be aware of words that rob you of authority. You're looking for fillers that would be something like and when you stop and you don't really know what to say, so your brain just starts filling your mouth with something that just fills up the space and takes the air. Just take a moment just to stop, just to pause. Let it breathe a second. We're all guilty of doing this, but we have to be aware of when these words come in, because it will rob you of credibility and it will rob you of authority. You know, the most powerful thing about communication is that everyone does it. We need strong communication skills for every relationship, for every interaction, and for every aspect of our lives. Now, to quote the great philosopher Shrek, ogres are like onions, and ogres have layers. Onions have layers. Well, the same is true for communication. Like an onion, there are many layers to communication, and I would love to help you and your team learn to communicate more effectively. So you can use the link in the show notes to schedule a free 15-minute personal consultation with me just to see how I can help you and your team sharpen their communication skills. And I'd like to say, if this added value to you, will you please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this with other people? I just want to help as many people find as much value as possible. Now, you can also interact with the podcast through all of the social media channels listed in the show notes. I want to say thanks again for being a part of the Mind Your Business podcast. It's always better when you're here. So go out, speak, review, get better, and go out and communicate. We'll see you next time.